Hello and welcome to lecture number 53. This is the last lecture in Unit 3, and it's topic 3.18, the Universal Negro Improvement Association. There's two learning objectives, and the first one is to describe the mission and methods of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, henceforth referred to as the UNIA. Marcus Garvey, born in 1887 in Jamaica, founded the UNIA in 1914, which would become the largest Pan-African movement in African American history. Although the UNIA was initially established in Jamaica, Garvey moved to New York, where the organization headquartered in Harlem. The UNIA grew rapidly, reaching 1,900 divisions by 1920 across the United States and in 39 other countries. At its peak, it boasted an impressive 11 million members and published its own newspaper, the Negro World, which had a circulation of up to 500,000 copies. The UNIA's mission was to unite all black people worldwide, promoting both racial solidarity and economic independence as core aspects of Pan-Africanism. In 1920, the UNIA held its first international convention in New York City, attracting over 25,000 attendees to Madison Square Garden, a testament to Garvey's widespread influence. During this convention, the organization issued the Declaration of Rights of the Negro Peoples of the World, which underscored the UNIA's belief in global black solidarity and the rights to self-determination for African people. The UNIA also promoted economic independence for black communities, which aligned with Garvey's broader vision of black separatism, a self-sustained black community separate from white influence and economic control. Garvey was initially inspired by Booker T. Washington's book Up From Slavery, which advocated for black empowerment through industrial and vocational training. However, unlike Washington, Garvey harbored deep distrust of white society and intended for vocational training to enable black people to achieve independence from white control globally. He even established the Negro Factories Corporation and the Black Star Line Shipping Company, which aimed to create economic opportunities for black people and connect the African diaspora through trade and commerce. Garvey eventually clashed with Washington's ideological rival W.E.B. Du Bois. He criticized Du Bois and the NAACP for being too selective about who should lead the fight for civil rights and what they should demand. In particular, Garvey opposed Du Bois's concept for the talented 10th, proposed that the top 10% of the African American population, those who were wealthy, well-educated, and influential, should lead the struggle for racial equality. Garvey believed that every black person should be involved in the fight for liberation, not just an elite few, and mockingly referred to the NAACP as the National Association for the Advancement of Certain People. Garvey also clashed with labor organizer A. Philip Randolph, who opposed Garvey's separatist ideology and criticized his emphasis on black nationalism over integration. Randolph was a prominent socialist and civil rights activist, and he argued that solidarity among all oppressed workers, regardless of race, was essential for dismantling systemic inequality. These ideological clashes highlighted the diverse perspective within black leadership during this period, with Garvey's radical vision contrasting sharply with other leaders' integrationist approaches. One of Garvey's most notable proposals was his Back to Africa movement, which was popularized by the phrase Africa for Africans, those at home and those abroad. This slogan emphasized the idea of global African diaspora, uniting all black people under a shared African identity, regardless of where they lived. Garvey envisioned building a nation where black people could escape systemic oppression and establish a society founded on self-determination and economic independence. To realize this goal, he looked to Liberia, a country established by the American Colonization Society in the early 1800s, with support from the U.S. government and private donors as a colony for free black people returning from the United States. To facilitate repatriation, Garvey founded the Black Star Line, a steamship company meant to transport African Americans back to Africa. He funded the venture by selling shares at $5 each, raising over $1 million and acquiring 3 ships. Garvey saw the Black Star Line as a symbol of black enterprise and autonomy, and the ships made trips to the Caribbean and even across the Atlantic. Unfortunately, the company faced significant issues, including poor management, high maintenance costs for the aging vessels, and eventual financial failure. Due to the company's collapse, Garvey was later convicted of mail fraud related to the mismanagement of funds. The federal government had been closely monitoring Garvey, perceiving his message as a threat to the social order. His conviction in 1925 resulted in a prison sentence, but he was later offered an option to leave prison and return to Jamaica on the condition that he would never return to the United States. Garvey's vision of repatriation included an appeal to the League of Nations to allow African Americans to settle in former German colonies in Africa following World War I. However, this request was denied as the League did not support Garvey's territorial ambitions for black settlement, despite the League's foundational belief in self-determination. Despite these setbacks, Garvey's Back to Africa movement left a lasting legacy, inspiring future leaders and movements focused on black empowerment and self-reliance. The second learning objective says, describe the impact of Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association on political thought throughout the American diaspora. Garvey's stance on black pride and self-determination inspired African Americans to embrace a shared heritage, a message that resonated especially with those who had experienced severe racial violence and discrimination. His message of racial unity and empowerment found supporters both in urban centers and rural areas, particularly in the South among sharecroppers and tenant farmers who felt disenfranchised and oppressed by systemic racism. The UNIA's newspaper, The Negro World, played a crucial role in spreading this message widely, reaching black communities across the United States and internationally. Garvey also promoted economic independence and community uplift. To support this goal, the UNIA employed over 1,000 people, not only as administrative staff in his organization, but also through the Negro Factories Corporation. This enterprise managed several UNIA-owned grocery stores and restaurants, providing jobs and financial stability to its members. The corporation even had plans to expand into other industries, such as garments manufacturing and printing, aiming to make black communities more self-sufficient. In the political realm, Garvey took a strong stand against lynching and advocated for voting rights, though the UNIA did not endorse candidates or run for office. Instead, Garvey focused on building a separate, parallel structure where African Americans could exercise political rights autonomously. His approach centered on establishing institutions that would allow black people to develop political influence outside of the mainstream political system, reflecting in his belief in self-reliance and separation from white-dominated structures. Garvey prioritized educational advancement through the UNIA's Juvenile Division, which provided young members with an education steeped in black pride, vocational skills, Bible studies, and military training. The curriculum was organized by age and later by gender, teaching boys and girls in a way that Garvey believed would prepare them for leadership within black communities. This division also emphasized historical lessons on African civilizations and the achievements of black leaders, aiming to instill confidence and a strong sense of identity among youth. In line with this principle of self-determination, Garvey made an attempt to establish a settlement in Liberia and petitioned the League of Nations to allow African Americans to settle in former German territories like Tanzania. Even though these efforts ultimately failed, Garvey's push for black separatist institutions remained strong. Alongside the Negro World newspaper and the Juvenile Division, the UNIA developed the Negro Factories Corporation and also organized the African Motor Corps, which trained members in military discipline, driving, and auto repair. This corps was associated with the All-Male African Legion, a paramilitary group aimed at fostering unity, discipline, and pride among black men. Another significant institution was the Black Cross Nurses, an all-female organization inspired by the Red Cross. The Black Cross Nurses provided basic health services and first aid training, as well as opportunities for black women to engage in community service and leadership roles. The organization was also there to promote health education within black communities, emphasizing the importance of public health and hygiene. Through these efforts, Garvey's UNIA created a network of organizations that aimed to empower black communities economically, politically, and socially, leaving a legacy of self-reliance and Pan-African pride. Finally, the primary objective of the UNIA was to achieve black liberation from colonialism and oppression across the African diaspora. As we've discussed, the organization pursued this goal through economic empowerment, cultural pride, and political independence, laying a foundation that would inspire subsequent black nationalist movements through the 20th century. The UNIA's framework later served as a model for movements like the Black Panther Party and the Nation of Islam, both of which adopted its emphasis on self-reliance, solidarity, and community-centered activism. The UNIA's flag, now a lasting symbol of black pride and solidarity, features 3 horizontal stripes in red, black, and green. Each color holds a specific meaning. Red represents the blood of African ancestors, black signifies the skin and identity of black people, and green symbolizes the land that they inhabit and seek to reclaim. This flag, often called the Pan-African flag, has since been widely adopted by Pan-African and black liberation movements as a unifying symbol of resistance and resilience. Garvey's leadership of the UNIA came to an end when he was imprisoned for mail fraud in 1925 and subsequently deported to Jamaica in 1927. After Garvey's departure, the UNIA struggled to maintain its unity and began to splinter into smaller factions, eventually leading to its decline. Although the organization never regained its former strength, Garvey's influence endured, and his ideas of Pan-Africanism and black nationalism continued to inspire activists and organizations committed to civil rights, independence, and self-determination across the African diaspora. And finally, to recap, Marcus Garvey led the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which attracted millions of members worldwide and became the largest Pan-African movement of its time. Garvey promoted the Back to Africa movement, even creating a steamship company, the Black Star Line, to support transportation for repatriation. He advocated for industrial, political, and educational advancement, emphasizing self-determination through separatist black institutions such as the Negro Factories Corporation, the Negro World newspaper, and the Black Cross Nurses. The UNIA's framework became a model for future black nationalist organizations like the Black Panther Party and the Nation of Islam, emphasizing economic independence, cultural pride, and solidarity. The UNIA's tricolor flag, featuring red, black, and green, remains a lasting symbol of black pride, unity, and freedom, carrying forward Garvey's legacy of Pan-Africanism and liberation. Thank you for watching. If you would like to watch the next lecture, click the thumbnail on the screen. And if you would like more resources to help you study, you can visit apushlights.com/AFAM. I wish you the best of luck with your studies, and I hope to see you back on the next lecture.